Good evening. The Charter Township of Plymouth Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, June 11th, 2019 will come to order. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Here.
Trustee Dempsey.
Present.
Clerk Vorba here. Trustee Dorshevitz.
Here.
Trustee Kermy.
Here.
Treasurer Clinton.
Here.
Supervisor Heisey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be led by Trustee Gary Heitman.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gary. Item C is approval of the agenda. Comments, questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Clerk.
I move for the approval of the agenda for Tuesday, June 11th, 2019.
Motion's made by Clerk Vorba. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Heitman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next up is item D, approval of the consent agenda. Comments, questions?
I have one change on the minutes. Page 18 is a first sentence on there is a huge typo. We had 9 of the 11 were planning expansion for the new businesses, and 1 had ever heard from the township instead of 1 had never heard.
Never.
So it's a
Noted.
very big difference.
1 had ever heard.
And 1 had never.
Never.
1 had ever heard?
No, it says. And
Yeah, 9 of the 11, and only 1 had ever heard from the township before.
Ah, that is a big difference.
Got it.
9 of the 11, only 1 had heard from the township
Right.
before.
Yeah, it should be one.
Yeah.
Only one, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Noted.
Anything else under item D?
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Heitman.
I move we approve the consent agenda as amended.
Motion's made by Trustee Heitman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Dempsey. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next up is public comments and questions limited to 3 minutes. This is not your only opportunity during the meeting to comment. You also will have an opportunity at the end of the meeting, and we also encourage questions on individual agenda items as long as they are pertinent or germane to that particular item. So any other comments, questions from the public at this time? Very good. Hearing none, we're going to move on to new business. Item F1 is a public hearing on the proposed special assessment district for General Drive. At this time, we're going to open the public hearing, so I will need a motion to do that.
Mr. Supervisor, I move we go to a public hearing.
Motion's made by Trustee Heitman to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Clerk Vorba. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee Heitman.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dorshevitz.
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We are now in a public comment period for the General Drive Special Assessment District at 703. At this time, I would like how about if we have the township's representatives come forward and just give us a overview of the project, and then we will take public comment as well. So that would be DPW Director Pat Felrath and George Sakoff from OHM.
So good evening. This is the first public hearing, one of 2 public hearings that we have for a special assessment district. This is for the General Drive that's located just off of Ann Arbor Road, south of Ann Arbor Road, just west of the railroad embankment, which includes General Drive and General Court. It's an industrial park. So tonight, as with all special assessment districts, the board is requested to make a determination whether or not to proceed or not, and if the board determines to proceed, then to pass the resolution which authorizes the engineer to commence with final engineering, to solicit bids, and then come back later for our second public hearing of assessment, which the board will be asked again whether or not to proceed. So at this public hearing, we included in the packet the demonstration of support.
He's not even close. That's
Oh,
wrong.
I'm not
You're
even,
look-
I
You're
know.
in the wrong
it didn't-
general drive.
It didn't look
okay.
South,
south.
Oh,
south of Ann Arbor Road.
right there.
No, it didn't even look familiar. Where am I?
Now you
Start
gotta
the
go
bowling alley.
further east.
East.
There you go. Start at the bowling
You're
alley.
Go
Right
east,
there.
young man. Yeah.
That's right.
Right
So
there.
this is
Perfect.
General Drive.
There you go.
Yep, that's it.
There is General Drive.
So yes, General Drive extends from Joy Road to Ann Arbor Road,
Yeah,
and there's a general court right there.
right here. General
Yes.
Drive. All the way down to
Joy Road.
General Court is right here. Okay, sorry about that.
Better on satellite.
So the idea is to, if this project proceeds, the goal is to construct it this year in order to capture those state funds that were earmarked for this project. And the level of support is included in your packet. And we included two criteria for support. Number one is the front footage. So the property owners that signed the petition demonstrate the majority of the front footage of the road that's being approved, which you typically see in all special assessment districts. That's per the state law. The second criteria is a little bit different from our special assessment districts. We have it based on parcel area. And the reason why it's different in this case, because this is not a residential special assessment district. It's non-residential. In fact, it's an industrial zoned area. And so typically in a residential SAD, per the law, that the assessment has to be proportional to the special benefit that's conferred upon the property being assessed. So in a residential SAD, the residential lots are typically more or less the same size, and they all receive the same type of benefit. You have a dwelling unit or a potential dwelling unit on the parcel. In this case, for this industrial zoned area, we have lots that vary in size. And also, what's apparent when you look at this district is that the lot size correlates with the building. Larger the lot size, you have larger the building, larger the garage space, larger the number of vehicles. So because of the variability of the lots and the correlation between the large lot sizes and the building space and the truck and the vehicle number of vehicles, we recommended this criteria based on parcel area being the other criterion to demonstrate support, and then ultimately to be assessed based on parcel area. Now, the petition that was circulated by the property owners, they're aware of the cost estimate and of this methodology, and they were provided that information, and that's what's shown here is the demonstration of support. So in both criteria, the front footage is 57%, and the criterion based on parcel area, that represents approximately 66%. So having said that, George Sackhoff from OHM Advisors, who's our engineer for road projects, we're here tonight to answer any questions that you may have about the project.
Let me just, you mentioned it, and I just want to reiterate it, that this project would not be possible were it not for the $500,000 grant that we received from the state of Michigan in the last fiscal year budget that was orchestrated by State Rep Jeff Noble. And we certainly want to expend the funds this year, or at least claim them this year. And therefore, we certainly see this project as moving with a fairly great sense of urgency. Overall project cost, though, is still how much, George, estimated?
1.9 million.
1.9 million.
Without the funding.
without the funding. So we're still looking at a considerable project that will be borne by the landowners along General Drive. And I know that unlike a residential SAD where the property owners can and oftentimes see and experience the damage that's been done to their roads, in this case, we had a very difficult challenge in dealing with property owners who had no other interest in these parcels other than they were the property owners or they were collecting the rent, but they were located in areas throughout southeast Michigan. So it was quite a challenge to get them to respond, to acknowledge the issue, and then to commit to the project. And so we appreciate all the property owners and businesses along here who have committed to the project, and also for all of you in the audience who I know worked many long hours tracking down property owners, meeting with them, and explaining this project. And hopefully Gary Heitman, I know, has worked with many of them. And Gary, later on, if you can acknowledge all the folks that you've worked with, that'd be great. So, all right, so that's my kind of preamble questions. Any other comments or questions from the board?
Yes, I have a few.
Yeah, Chuck.
Give us a summary of what the scope of the work is, whether you're going to remove pavement, just tell us some details. And there's two more questions. Which one of these property owners is the company that sells water?
Absapir.
Yeah, Absapir is
Absapir.
Which one is it? I can't see it.
AMI.
Can you zero in?
That's AMI at the top. That it?
It's got to be, who's the property owner?
It's probably a family LLC.
Bought, yeah.
What is it called?
Bought
Oh,
reality.
Right here.
So you get
the
$309,000
one
out of
on
the,
Joy Road on the corner, and then the one next to it, I believe.
so they got 1/4 of the total bill.
So they have signed it,
Yes.
all of their parcels.
So they get 308,000 of it, 309,000.
And so the calculation is based on linear foot still?
The calculation for the assessment is based on square footage area of the parcel.
Right here.
All right, square footage is within the state law,
So the,
so we don't get a lawsuit as a result.
so the state law dictates how you approve the district, which is based on front footage,
Right.
but it leaves some leeway open for how you assess the parcels. Parcel area is one of those methods.
So you have high confidence it's defensible in case someone challenges it, one of the property owners.
As far as we can tell from the statute, it meets those limitations, yeah. So just to give you an overview of the project, it's along General Drive, there's about 3,000 feet of road. The court is about 700 feet. It's all existing concrete road, built, we assume it's built on an existing subgrade like many of the other concrete roads in the township. We're proposing a full reconstruction of the cross-section. So we would follow the Wayne County industrial standard for a new concrete road, which is 9 inches of concrete on 8 inches of 21 AA aggregate limestone. So it's a fairly robust cross-section. We'd be installing full under drain under all the curbs, tying those under drains into the existing catch basins. So there would be subgrade drainage as part of the new road reconstruction.
Are those catch drains already plumbed to a storm drain?
They'd have to core the structure, which is typical.
So currently, it's not draining to a storm, it's just draining onto the grade.
Surface, right. So you see the surface, the grate on the surface and the curb, so it's taking the surface drainage, but our understanding is there's no under drain system tying into it, but we can do that as part of the project.
That's in the budget.
Correct, yeah. Yeah. So both sides of the curb would have under drain under the curb line. That drains the subgrade, that'll go into the catch basins, into the storm sewer system that's there currently. We did also include some budget for reconstructing some of those catch basins because when you get, 40, 50 years old, sometimes those need to be reconstructed. But in general, we popped the covers and looked inside, and a lot of them are in pretty good condition. So we're only thinking minimal, rehab on those structures.
So to getting back to it again, I didn't understand completely. The catch basins are presently plumbed to a storm sewer?
Correct, to a storm sewer.
They
like
are.
A 12-inch concrete pipe or an 18-inch concrete pipe, but they're not plumbed to accept the 6-inch under drain. That's just like a 6-inch perforated pipe. So what they'll do is they'll core a hole in the structure and tie it in.
All right, but you will not have to be excavating on the lots for piping.
There would be minimal impact to the lots. Typically, they'll place that right under the curb line, about 3 feet deep.
How many days will it be closed, or you will do it phased?
Well, we'll have to, during the detailed design, we'll have to figure out the staging. I mean, obviously, we have to keep access to the businesses open, so we'll put together a full traffic control plan, and, they'll have to keep the road open to traffic, so we'll have to come up with a plan either to have one-way traffic, through the site, and then maybe halfway through, we might have to switch that and go southbound, but we'll have to come up with a plan to keep access open to the businesses. It'll be part of the design.
And how many days are you going to allow for concrete curing?
If we're using a standard MDOT mix, I mean, typically we wait, a week to 10 days until we get the concrete breaks back from the geotechnical engineer. Has to receive a certain amount of strength, and then, we're allowed to open the road per the MDOT specification. If for some reason we need to get on the concrete earlier, there's other options like the high early strength mix, which typically after 4 or 5 days you can get on the concrete. But, we'd only recommend that if we really thought it was necessary for the logistics of traffic control and, keeping things moving through the district, because obviously everyone has to do business.
Most likely, you're going to be going up against weather. So
Yeah, so this project, the intent is to have it designed and bid this year and constructed in 2020.
oh, you won't be pouring concrete.
It's just too large of a
right.
project. There's no way to build it this year.
So I urge you to be patient to not damage the concrete, one, because of premature demand to use the surface. Be patient to let it cure.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I know the businesses might not like it, but it's worth the effort to get a better surface for the next 40 years.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, when they pour the concrete, we take cylinders. They take cylinders, and we break those cylinders typically at 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, and 28 days. So a lot of times, if we get the necessary strength at 7 days, we can open the concrete. If not, we'll do another break a few days later to check the strength.
Okay, good.
Okay, any other questions from the board or comments? Any comments or questions from the public at this time?
Hi, Mary Ann McLaren, Mark Trail. Just a question, and I think it has to do because Friends of the Rouge are in our backyard. Permeable versus non-permeable surface, that's an awful lot of concrete with an awful lot of runoff. Was there any way anything can be adapted to help absorb?
Well, I'm not a civil engineer, but I would not recommend pervious surface for a road of this nature. It would be better used in a parking lot or an area that does not receive a whole lot of heavy driving. So George, you can contradict me if you want, but.
For this type of a road, obviously the structural aspect is critical, and there's not really another option. And, Wayne County would obviously have to approve anything we recommend, and they have a very strict standard for industrial roads, which is, the 9 inches of concrete on the stone cross-section. Yeah.
Just wondering.
Good question, though. Good question. Sir, I saw you had your hand up. You're going to have to come forward. Sorry.
I'm BASA Properties, and I'm sure we've all been here a number of years. Talk right into the big mics over there. This mic? Okay. We've been here a number of years, and I think it's times passed by, but we had a big flood 4 or 5 years ago, and my building was the only one that was flooded, and it didn't drain. So I just wanted to ask, who is it that I could talk to so that in part of the planning to put a new system in, that the drain works? And I don't know, because I got no help when it happened. And so I just want to make sure that if we're going to spend this much money, that I'm going to be gone, but down the road, I don't want the building to flood again.
Was that flooding surface flooding, or what, was it coming from,
The rain.
well, coming from out of pipes, or was it running over the land towards your property?
Well, it was so deep in the road that the community drove in the front yard of my property and destroyed my, what do you call it, system for keeping, so, yeah, it was, and it just didn't drain.
Okay.
And it was in my property that flooded, and the guy across the road got it up to his driveway. So it's just something I want to,
Well, the gentleman to your right is George Zekoff, and he'll be the lead engineer on this project.
Okay.
So, George, if you can give him your card afterwards,
I'll give you my card.
just let him
Yeah,
know what.
I just want to take the ounce of prevention if I
Sure.
can, because that was six. BSA,
BSA.
9033.
Right in the middle.
That's an old record, but the township is going to get it corrected. I'll give you a card, too. All right, thanks.
Government software. Yes, sir, come on up.
I just wanted to,
We need your name. We need your name, too.
my name's John Zayak. I work with Plymouth Rubber on General Drive. I'm part of the Sarah Bell company that owns the property. I just wanted to note it on how much traffic actually goes up and down General Drive. And I don't know if you have the figures or you have the traffic counts, if you could just note it on, because it was astonishing on how much traffic goes down there.
Is it predominantly truck traffic?
Yeah.
Yeah, predominantly it's truck traffic, yeah.
Is that yours?
Okay, anyone else? Pat, you want to say anything?
I'm Pat McHugh, and I work for George
A
Stosenfeld.
little bit closer to the mic.
Talking the wrong one.
The big one.
We have the same problem.
We got lots of mics.
Must be the age or something.
We do that just to mess with people.
Oh, I know. Gary, he's laughing. Look at him. He'll go for it. Anyways, I'm Pat McHugh, and I work for George Stosenfeld, has AMI Holdings, which are the first two properties up there. And wanted to thank everybody from the township and really from Wayne County, from Michigan, for all the support. I don't live in Plymouth Township, and I don't live in Wayne County. I actually live in Macomb County, and I live in Shelby Township. And I want to tell you that you have a great community out here. It's really nice to see the support that you have and the things that are going on here. But I'm here to support the businesses on General Drive and to work with the township. I'm retired after 36 years at another job, so 3 days a week. But excellent support and great work from everybody here. So thanks
Well,
again.
Patrick, and we're going to say some nice things about you right now, too, because this project, well, this project would not be possible were it not for you. Oh, okay. I know a lot of you guys worked on it, but Patrick really did a lot of the legwork to get a lot of these signatures and do the explanation that was necessary. Again, in many cases with landlords who, couldn't find us on a map sometimes. So it was vital, the work that you did, Pat, and we really appreciate it. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
Most of these landlords are absentee.
Well, I wouldn't call them absentee, but they own properties all over southeast Michigan. So when somebody says, hey, I've got a property on General Drive in Plymouth Township, and they want to do an SAD, it's like, who are you? That was kind of like the first reaction that we would get. So
And Pat took it upon himself to drive all over southeast Michigan and get their signatures after talking to them.
yeah. Okay, anybody else from the public at this time? All right, very good. I need a motion now to close the public hearing.
Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Heitman?
I move we close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Clerk Vorba. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yep.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The public hearing is closed at 7:24 p.m. Next is item F2. This is the General Drive Special Assessment District Public Hearing of Necessity Resolution. And we've already had the public hearing, so at this point, I'm entertaining a motion on the resolution of necessity.
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Heitman.
I move to approve Resolution Number 2019-06-11-55, authorizing the engineer to complete final engineering drawings, take bids, and have the supervisor prepare the final special assessment roll for the board's approval upon completion of the 30-day waiting period, provided no objections have been filed.
Motion's made by
Second.
Trustee Heitman, seconded by Trustee Kermy.
A
Mr.
question,
Clerk. Oh,
just
yes,
a quick
yes, sir.
question, just maybe for Mr. Bennett. I noticed the actual resolution says that the percentage of record owners of land by front footage within the district is not less than 51%, as opposed to 57 point whatever percent that's actually on that chart.
Well, 51% is the, okay.
What the statute says is that if it's a petition by the property owners, it's got to be at least 50% or more than 50%. And then if there's objections filed, then there's another measurement.
So is this, the public hearing and what was provided, is that part of the record that would be considered in litigation? We don't need to have a resolution that specifies the exact percentage then, is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. And this public hearing is the public hearing of necessity, not of proportionality.
Fine.
The next one will be proportionality. Yeah. Necessity just requires not less than 50%, or more than 50%.
Okay, Mr.
I'm sorry, I had another question, Kevin, too, regarding the resolution. So the resolution says a lot more than just completing the engineering drawings and preparing the special assessment roll. Specifically, in previous resolutions I've seen for SADs, it specifies how you're going to fund it, when they're going to pay, and the interest rate, et cetera. This resolution doesn't have anything regarding how the township will be reimbursed. Is that coming in the next round, or would this have to be modified?
No, this is the hearing of necessity, which is only the creation of the district. The second step is proportionality, and that will set forth the amount that each particular parcel is going to be responsible for. That's how the township would get reimbursed.
And also under our grant with MDOT for the $500,000, we've already received we've received half of that money already, okay? The other half we get at the time that the bid is awarded to the contractor, which we expect will happen in the next couple months. So we should have the full $500,000 earmarked for this project before the end of the calendar year. And we can use that money towards this project.
About when will the proportionality meeting be, hearing, excuse me?
We may need to bring the engineers back in for that one. They're out in the hall, so.
Well, you have a 30 days where people, right now, where they can object, yeah.
But Kurt, you want to award the contract before the end of the calendar year?
Ideally, yes.
All right.
I don't want to be in a situation where I have to go back to the state and ask for them to hold on to the money for us. Okay, so we still have a live motion on the floor. Hearing no further objections, Mr. Clerk can take the roll.
Clerk Borba, yes. Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Next is item F3. This is the golf course loan interest rate amendment. Treasurer Clinton.
Thank you. Bob, if you could bring that up.
Which part do you want to
No,
see?
that's good, because
Right
I
here.
didn't bring my notes, so I'm going to have to read it from here. Just as background information, in 2013, the township's general fund loaned $390,000 to the golf course for repairs and enhancements to the golf course, and did that at an interest rate of 4% a year. Since that time, as everyone is well aware, the golf course has been losing money, so the annual losses combined with the 4% interest rate has grown that $390,000 to $942,000 as of the end of 2018. Now, what does that mean? If you take a look, and the folks from Plant Moran will be presenting the financials for 2018, but what that means is that $942,000 right now is restricted from our fund balance. So if we have a fund balance of $4 million, $942,000 of that would be restricted because there's a possibility that we would eventually have to write off that loan. So that $942 is restricted from your general fund balance. So Plant Moran suggested that we do a couple things. Number one, develop a plan on how we're either going to have the golf course pay that off or eventually write it off. And another suggestion was that we can reduce the rate of interest to a more market competitive rate down to from 4% to 2%. So what that means is we would charge ourselves less money for the loan, and eventually would result, if we do have to write it off, would result in a smaller write-off going forward. That's it in a nutshell.
I believe the plan is still to write off the full amount in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so what the suggestion that we agreed upon, and I think it's a good one, is, you know, we have this $942,000 out there. We've got a brand-new management company that signed a 5-year contract. Let's give them the opportunity to turn the golf course around financially, but in the event that they can't, we would write off 1/5 of that every single year during the duration of their tenure as the manager of the golf course. So regardless of if they lose money or make money during the time that they're managing the golf course, at the end of their contract, this entire debt will either have been repaid because they're successful or repaid because we've written it off.
Okay, any comments or
Yeah.
questions from the board?
Some questions, yeah. So we can't go back beyond January 1st of this year retroactively? We couldn't go back to the beginning of the loan and restate it?
I didn't study that in great detail.
Martin Olesznik from Plant Moran, do you have any
Well,
comments on that?
The previously approved rate was 4%, so through this year, so that's why it's not being restated. If the board decides to change it to the 2% going forward, you can change that, but kind of can't go back in hindsight. The 2% is essentially reimbursing the general fund for the fact that the general fund can't invest that money somewhere else, and that, I mean, the market interest rates right now are really low, so 2% would cover general fund for those expenses or for missing out on the interest income.
So if I took advantage of the treasurer not having his notes with him to ask these questions, maybe you can fill in. If I do the interest rate calculation, is it about $80-some thousand worth of interest that's accumulated, or is it more than that?
I don't recall offhand.
This year, I think it was, last year, I think it was over $100,000.
Just in 1 year?
The interest? No, that would
So-
just be, not the interest.
The loss at the golf course.
So every
Including
year,
the loss.
Yeah, but I think if you assume you averaged a $100,000 loss per year, 4% of that would be $4,000. My suspicion is the interest is closer to $20,000 than it is $80,000
Per year.
per year.
Okay, so then for an accumulative basis, it'd be 80 or 100,000 after.
It could be.
Okay,
So you're asking what the accrued interest from 2013 is?
that's a much more precise way
In
of
case we
asking the
want,
question.
because we could decide to write off or forgive that interest at a later date.
Well, technically, based on the operations of the golf course, I think the township's kind of looking at it as a whole and saying, okay, what needs to occur with that loan over time. So whether it's interest only and everything else is paid back, I think it just depends on the operations of the golf course over the next 5 years.
so it grew to 942,000 because every year that there was a shortfall, it's essentially a loan to the golf course fund.
Correct.
And the interest, the unpaid interest is compounding at, or has been at 4%, which
That's correct.
is a economic boogeyman that keeps getting bigger.
Yeah, and very likely it's less than $100,000, the accumulated interest, just from the perspective that the original loan, I believe, was stated it was $300,000 to $400,000 initially. So at that point, it's probably about $12,000 a year, and then based on the balance right now, it goes up to in the 20s. So it's probably somewhere a little bit less than 100, but it's still definitely a relatively substantial dollar amount of the total.
So then the accumulated losses would be about the same amount as the original loan.
It's pretty substantial, yes. So the original loan, I believe, was for improvements to the golf course. It wasn't to fund any losses or anything like that. Over time, there has been money that was put into the golf course for operations, and that's kind of the quote-unquote loss.
Was that 390,000, did it include golf carts, or was that part of the loan we got, not loan, where we borrowed 1.9 million?
I don't think, yeah, I think that was part of the 1.9 million.
So this 390 was something else.
Yeah, the golf, gosh, I'm doing this from memory and I don't have a good memory. The golf carts, were they leased?
I thought no, the golf course were purchased, and I thought those were part of a bond.
No,
The 1.9 million,
Yeah.
that included the amphitheater.
it's a separate, no, the golf carts are a separate, they're a separate loan.
Separate note.
Note, a note.
It was a separate
Because
note.
we're paying them off, I think the last payment is this year.
Golf
You're right,
carts
that
haven't-
wasn't,
Well, golf
haven't
carts have been
written off.
paid for.
Correct.
that wasn't part of the 1.9.
So the 1.9 was, I don't know, the pavilion and other stuff?
And the
Right.
amphitheater.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
this
the amphitheater.
390 is totally separate pot, or
Yes,
it's a separate thing that I don't remember exactly what.
it was separate.
The golf course fund can't operate at a deficit because that would be money that doesn't exist, right? So it has to be loaned.
Well, 4% in 2013, that was a really high interest rate. Because interest rates have gone up slightly since 2013, right?
No, I agree, yeah.
So that was a really rich interest rate to be paying, 4%. And in that vein, what is your average return on money invested, cash invested right now, Mark? Or the last year, let's say, typical
Well, we're
average?
getting about 0.9 in checking, about 1.4 in savings, and about 2.2 in money markets.
And the money markets are more than 12 months, or they're under?
They're actually, they're completely liquid, so I can pull money out of there
Okay.
anytime I want.
All right.
So I don't want to give anybody the impression that we're expecting the new managers of the golf course to generate $942,000 plus over the next 5 years. It would be fantastic if they did, but we're operating under the assumption that we will see no revenue, am I right, Mark? And that we will be, over the next 5 years, paying this back to ourselves. So it is like literally taking money out of my left pocket and putting it in my right pocket. What it does, though, is it does remove this very unusual thing from our balance sheet that doesn't belong there. And by the fact that we're not going to be using this, we're cutting this thing off now tonight in terms of using this as some kind of
Bank.
a loan or a bank. So starting with the next budget, which I would hope will be a 2-year budget, we will start putting money aside every year to pay down this loan and move it from a restricted fund item to a unrestricted item.
Well, Kurt, you just raised something that made me think of, what about, would it be cleaner if we transferred this loan to the sewer and water fund? In other words, had the sewer and water fund pay it off and then it'd be a loan? Would it be cleaner? Would it be easier? Because the money wouldn't, sewer and water fund is a bigger fund, plus it's not, you can encumber it a little easier.
I mean, I see the auditors are shaking their heads no, and I'm sure if Pat Felrath were here, he would say no as well, because
it's
he doesn't
a
want his fund used for that purpose.
The
He
golf
needs it.
course and the water and sewer fund are separate
Right.
funds.
But you can always borrow money from water and sewer. We've
Can I
done it in
borrow
the past.
some?
I guess you could.
So I was just trying to make it easy, what's easier to keep track because if you need that general fund money and it's encumbered, the chances of needing general fund money are probably greater than needing water and sewer, because water and sewer has a revenue source.
I don't know that would be legal.
So you can't,
Be legal?
you can't technically do that. You could borrow money as long as the golf fund was still going to repay the money. So the loan still remains on the books. So technically, it doesn't really solve the township's just quote-unquote problem. Now, from the general fund's perspective, the township's absolutely correct. The unrestricted fund balance that's in the general fund will remain completely unchanged by the payoff of the loan, because right now that $900,000 is completely restricted for that loan purpose. So technically, your balance sheet, the unrestricted amount, will not be impacted. It's what ends up happening is that receivable that's on the books or the advance on the general fund ends up decreasing over time, and then the restricted portion of the fund balance ends up decreasing. So basically, those two amounts get affected, but your unrestricted, what you can spend on a daily basis, on an annual basis, is completely unaffected. On the golf course side, what ends up happening is you end up reducing that liability over time.
And the purpose of this change is to make that liability not grow as big as it would with a 4% interest rate.
Not grow is significantly correct. And at the end of the day, the 2% is covering what the interest rates the general fund could be earning out in the market, and that's the ultimate goal. You want to make sure that the general fund is not incurring the additional expense or not enough of an interest earning.
It's just another way of, a way of reducing our loss on this over the next 5 years.
And it's completely fair because the interest rate at 4% is outrageous.
It's considering the market rate right now or what the market is right now, it's high.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the board or from the public?
Just get out there and play some golf. That'll solve the problem.
It stops raining.
Mark, do you want to make them?
Yes, I move to approve resolution number 2019-06-11-56, authorizing the adjustment of the internal interest rate charged on the unpaid balance owed by the golf course fund to the general fund from 4% to 2% per annum, retroactive to January 1st, 2019.
Motion's made by Treasurer Clinton. Is there a second? A second by Trustee Heitman. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Dorshevitz.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman.
Yes.
Clerk Borba. Yes. Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. Next up is item 4. This is a first reading of an ordinance creating what would be known as the Plymouth Township Environmental Leadership Commission. I'm introducing this ordinance. It's based on the existing Environmental Stewardship Committee, which was an offshoot of the Citizens Advisory Council initiated in 2017. Most of the committees are pretty dormant at this point, except for the Environmental Subcommittee, and they are continuing to be very active. So the objective here is to recognize this as a more formal structure, and by creating a commission, that we would have a formal appointment process, and this group would be integrated into town hall operations and initiatives. Creating a formal commission will continue the citizen-driven effort and make township government more of a partner in it. The attached draft ordinance has been reviewed by Kevin Bennett, and I've also met with members of the current Environmental Stewardship Committee at their last meeting, which was about 2 months ago. This will be the first reading tonight, and then the second reading would be scheduled for June 25th. This would be treated like any other Plymouth Township board or commission, like the Planning Commission or the Zoning Board. They would not serve with compensation, no compensation at all, sorry. But it would be a membership, I believe, either of 7 or 9 members, and folks would have to apply, just as they would for any other consideration for any other board or commission. Those individuals would be reviewed by the administration and then presented to you as the board for final approval, just like we would do for any other commission. The township itself can provide assistance in terms of a meeting location, which basically we do already, and also staff on an as-needed basis. More than likely, it would be Sarah Weissel, possibly myself, possibly Pat Felrath, on an as-needed basis. But otherwise, this organization would elect its own members, its own leadership, its own chair, etc., and adopt its own rules of governance, and it would be a freestanding entity. Bob?
2 comments. First, because they're a commission like other commissions, why aren't we paying them? We pay other commissions.
Well, I mean, that might be something to look at down the road, but I think right now that the public interest in this would be that this would be a volunteer group, And I don't know if I'm not sure if the public at this time would be willing to see this as a paid position. I think these individuals have been working without pay now for 2 years anyway, and really the issue has not come up from many of them. And
Okay,
you know,
so by making this, until now, by making this an ordinance, so violation of the ordinance, could any person who shall violate or fail to comply,
yeah, that was put in there by after the fact. So
civil fine?
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no penalty associated with it.
Yeah, the reason that's in there is because all ordinances require certain, not require, but it's advisable to include all violation and penalty provisions, repeal, severability, savings clause, publication, and effective date provisions. That's customarily in all ordinances. Because this is largely or entirely an administrative ordinance as opposed to a penal ordinance, I included that if there is a violation, it would be a civil fine.
But it's a civil fine, so if you're on this commission and the duties and powers are to promote community participation, and you don't do this, you could be subject to a civil fine.
I can just tell you that...
I mean, you could.
Well, and I can see you're smiling, Bob. I mean, I think you know that that's standard boilerplate ordinance.
I know. It struck me as odd.
And I just don't want to create some kind of a new Facebook sensation that we're going to be penalizing these members.
Finding volunteers for failing to do their duty.
Let's not give them any more ammunition.
To be fair to Trustee Dorshevitz, I contemplated not including a violation and penalty provision in there because, as I said, this is an administrative ordinance rather than a penal ordinance. But this would have been the first time I ever drafted an ordinance that did not contain a violation and penalty provision. So I just made it a civil fine.
Does it have to be $500?
It says not to exceed $500. And I'll tell you that for practical purposes, it would be really difficult to prove a violation of this ordinance.
You could have somebody in the future who just wants to do something to somebody and... All right.
Well, they're always subject to removal by the supervisor. So,
Can we change it to $1?
Board can change it to whatever the board wants it to be.
Make it $5.
$4.99. Do I hear $3?
Below 5.
is there an interest rate we're going to have to charge? All right. So, okay. Any other?
Well, in all seriousness, it could be $100. Is that more acceptable to you?
I think, yeah. I mean...
What's wrong with $1?
Yeah.
Well, that kind of means nothing, $1. I mean, I'm prepared to vote for this the way it is, but I was trying to address your issue.
You're asking people to volunteer for a board that could have a potential fine associated with it. I don't want to belabor it, but...
Oh, I know.
You know.
I'm just suggesting maybe it could be 100, and that would be a lot less than 500.
We can make it 100.
I can figure that math out.
That's what second reading is for. So.
All right.
All right. Any other questions or comments by the board? Anybody from the public?
Do you want me to make the motion when you're ready?
You decide.
Anybody else?
Oh, we got
Joan.
Joan's going to speak.
My name is Joan Whitty, and I've been on the Environmental Citizen Committee for 1 year. And increasingly, the environment is more important to all of us, especially with water runoff and PSAs, and we have a big watershed here in Plymouth Township. As currently structured, our Citizen Committee is very informal, and we tackle specifically what the four of us have time to tackle, which is not much. And I don't want to belittle the efforts of all of us on the committee because everyone is quite sincere. But we take on issues that our small group can handle. And I think that there are probably bigger issues that the Township of Plymouth should be addressing or looking forward to and being more future forward in its decision-making. And so I'm really pleased with the suggestion of an ordinance. There are many townships who have ordinances like this. It doesn't have to be something that gets in the way of business at all, but as complementary and protecting of where we live. So I support it.
Thank you.
Hi again, Mary Ann McLaren, Mark Trail. I've been on the Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee since its inception, and I agree with what Joan has said, and I think it is needed. I have a couple points of clarification, and it has to do with establishing the number of people that would be on the commission. And here it says it should be up to 9 members. You mentioned 7
Yeah,
or 9
it's 9.
members. The thing I went to goes in with your organization on what makes a forum. I thought by Robert's rules, a forum was half plus 1 of the number of commissions.
A quorum?
So if we don't know, it's in number 6 under D, organization meetings and rules and procedures. If we don't know how many members are going to be, how can we set a number of quorum?
Okay. I can have Kevin Bennett take a look at that before we do the final reading on the 25th.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're assuming that we're going to have a full complement of 9. It then gets into issues of members present. So I would just like Kevin to take a look at that, because public bodies get tripped up by that all the time. Is it a quorum of the members appointed, or is it a quorum of the members present? Because then you can have a situation where you have a minority of the overall board making decisions.
I know.
And we've all been in situations where that question has come up. So, Kevin, I'm not looking for a ruling tonight, but if you can just take a look at that, and if you recommend any changes, we can make
Sure.
those.
As a general matter, a quorum, which is over half, a quorum is required for the public body to conduct business and for it to take action. The general rule, it's not universal, but the general rule is that if there's a majority of that quorum, then that would be a valid act. Some statutes require a pure majority, not a majority of a quorum, but a majority of the entire board. That's for some zoning things. But the general rule is if there's a majority of a quorum of the board, that would be enough to take action.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm glad we're doing this.
Thank you. So, Kevin, just make sure that that makes sense based on what you just said. Okay. Anyone else from the public? All right, then I'm looking for a motion.
All right, ready?
Yep.
I move to approve Resolution 2019-6-11-57, authorizing the first reading of ordinance number 1016, amendment number 23, creating the Plymouth Township Environmental Leadership Commission.
Motion's made by Trustee Kermy. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Heitman. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Dorshevitz.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. Thank you very much. Next is item F5. This is the 2018 audit presentation and approval from Plant Moran, our township auditors.
Is that computer on now?
The computer is on.
The hard copy that was at the desk today, is that identical that was in the board packet?
That is correct.
Yeah. All right.
So good evening. My name is Martin Olenek. I'm the partner on the audit engagement. With me is Carrie Shea, who is the manager, and Aaron Brzezinski, who's the in charge. Hope I didn't butcher it too much. So we're going to go over the financial statement audit results. Feel free to ask us any questions throughout. I did want to point out to a couple things real quick. You do have a few documents that are in front of you. The financial statements, which are the thickest of the documents, instead of going page by page, as in the past, we're going to go through the graphical presentation, which actually Aaron's going to go through in a couple of seconds. One item that I did want to point out on the financial statements, it is a clean opinion, what we call an unmodified opinion, which is exactly what you should expect every year. What that means is that based on our testing, you can rely on the statements, rely on the numbers that are present, and that way you can budget accordingly, et cetera, for future years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron, and following Aaron's presentation, Carrie's going to go through the post-audit letter, and then, like I said, we'll entertain any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Good evening. As Martin said, you have graphs in front of you, and they're shown up here. We like to use the graphs as it allows you to see trends throughout the years. And like you said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask as we go through. The first graph in front of you shows general fund revenue for the year. And here we have a 5-year history of data from 2014 to 2018. Overall, revenue in the general fund increased approximately $300,000 this year compared to 2017. And here in the graph, you have it broken out by the major revenue types that the township brings in during the year. The largest revenue source is property taxes. Overall, property taxes increased about $590,000 compared to 2017. And that increase is due to the township is now including a tax administrative fee on their property taxes, and that increase is due to that new administrative fee this year. The second largest revenue section we have here, that third section in the graph, this other revenue, that's consisted of grants that the township receives, contributions, cable revenue, cable franchise fees, and some other miscellaneous revenue items. Overall, that total in that category decreased this year compared to last year. Last year, the township received a one-time payment from Wayne County to support SAD projects in the township, and that was not received in 2018. But it was, you can see it's kind of higher than the previous 3 years. Included in that amount, the township received $400,000 related to the sale of one of their revenue streams with a cell tower. So you can see that that's about $3.3 million this year. The next slide here, this is kind of just an easier picture of property taxes over the course of a few years. This one covers 2012 to 2018. As you can see, property tax revenue is trending upward for the most part, and it has not reached values of where it was before the decline a few years ago, but it is trending upward. And again, that jump from 2017 to 2018 is because of the new admin fee that's being charged beginning in 2018.
But that does not include the public safety millage.
No, this revenue, that would be revenue in fiscal year 19. This next slide here shows expenditures for the general fund. Again, we have a 5-year history of data here. Overall expenditures increased about $250,000 compared to 2017, with the largest variances being within the general government and the fire departments. Overall general government expenditures decreased about $490,000. In 2017, there was a large crack ceiling project that the general fund, or the general government incurred expenditures for, and that was completed. So those expenditures were not continued to 2018. In the fire department, there was an increase of about $567,000. There was a large purchase of a fire truck near the end of 2018, which increased the expenditures for the year. There was also an increase in some pension contributions for the year. Moving on to the next slide here. And this graph represents kind of the relationship between the revenue and the expenditures in the general fund that we just previously went over. It's not up there, so we're good. As you can see, revenue did exceed expenditures in the general fund this year, which allowed fund balance to increase. Total fund balance, which is represented by the top line in the graph, is increased about $250,000 in 2018 to about $4.3 million. And of that total fund balance, approximately 2.27 is unassigned. So that is the amount that's remaining after the restrictions and any assignments of fund balance. So as was discussed earlier about the loan to the golf course, this amount excludes that amount. And this is the amount that it can be used for any purpose the township chooses.
Question. When you talk about a fund balance, doesn't that vary throughout the year? Because as you take in taxes and you may owe you may have payments due out to other taxing authorities, stuff like that. So how do you calculate that? Do you take like a net, is it a net position or something like that?
Yep, so this fund balance amount represents at 12/31/18. It takes into account those fluctuations that do fluctuate during the year. So this is if you looked at 12/31/18, what is owed out, what is expected to come in. This would be representing the amount.
So it's a point in time of December 31.
Yep.
But that's the same as saying that we have that much unrestricted cash at that moment, right? No, it is not.
No, there's still obligations so it's not you can't think of that as cash. There are obligations that would reduce that amount.
I think often fund balance is confused with cash. Technically, I mean, it can be close to the cash balance. It doesn't necessarily equal the cash balance. So what ends up happening is you look at all the assets and liabilities of the township in the general fund and take a look at it. So a lot of times the biggest asset is cash. But you also have various receivables, could be from state shared revenues, could be other things. So technically it's not liquid cash yet, but that's considered part of the assets. Then you subtract out some of the current liabilities, so it could be payroll expenses or something to that extent, or vendor invoices. So once you net that, you end up with the fund balance.
Okay.
And then you have to break out the fund balance further to say, okay, what's restricted, what do we actually can't spend money on because it's technically already spent, or things that we can spend on. So the $2.275 million is truly amount that you can spend in the future on expenditures.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
While we're on that, is there some rule of thumb as to what percentage that should be at a minimum or optimally? Or
So historically, I would say before the 08 and 09 years, a lot of times municipalities looked at between 10 and 20% of your expenditures should be always in the unrestricted fund balance, just from the perspective of making sure they keep your doors open, making payroll, things like that. I would say generally since then, that rule of thumb's kind of almost fallen off the, kind of off radar, and more people are kind of concerned about, okay, what do we really need, what each municipality needs, and I would say that number has kind of inched upward. 15% is pretty fair. Given your fiscal year, which is 12/31 year end, you start collecting your property taxes and those become available right after the end of the year. So 15% is pretty good dollar amount. I will discuss some of the liabilities that you have, some of the long-term liabilities that could be a concern, the OPEB, pension, things like that. We can talk about it after the letter, but in general, I would say you're in that ballpark though.
So that 15% is 2,275,000 divided by 14,897?
Correct.
So,
So this slide here breaks out the township's unfunded costs related to the pension plan and the OPEB or retiree health care plan. And it shows the trend from the past 5 years. The pension liability is approximately $9.7 million, and you can see that that's been consistent with the liability the past 2 years. You will see that the OPEB liability did increase to about $19.6 million, and we've included a note at the bottom here kind of explaining that increase is due to there is a change in how the liability was calculated and how assumptions used to calculate that liability have been updated to be more accurate. And those assumption changes are listed at the bottom of the slide here.
the point there where it says an increase in salary scale from 3 to 3.5. Explain that, please.
Yes, so those assumptions are determined and given with the actuary, and so that would be that your salary increases were probably based on an increase before of 3% on average annually, and that would be a 3.5% increase that they just shuffled that into their calculation differently.
That's a big increase.
So the updated mortality tables meant people are living longer?
Correct, yes. So a lot of communities have experienced that number has gone up when they've moved into those newer tables, but it gives a more accurate representation of what your liability really would be.
The way I think about that with the OPEB is prior to GASB 75, is that correct?
Nice job.
Prior to GASB 75, municipalities were doing it different.
Everybody did it differently.
Not everybody, but there were different
Different
standards.
methods.
And
Right.
GASB
Some weren't even
75 said
measuring.
everybody will now follow the exact same actuarial assumptions. And because of that, our projected liability increased fairly significantly between 2017 and 2018.
This calculation here,
Oh,
that's a net present value? Is that what that number is, or it has nothing to do with net present value? Because when you say discount rate, I think of net present value.
No, it really is a net present value. That means that you should have had in this situation for the OPEB, you should have $20 million more today sitting in the fund than you do, because that will earn interest and pay for your future obligations. So yeah, it's a net present value of your future obligations.
All right.
So this one outlines, now we're just looking at, Now this slide looks at water and sewer activity. Here we have a 4-year history from 2015 to 2018. Compared to 2017, both operating revenue and operating expenses did decrease. Sale of water and sewage disposal charges both decreased due to a decrease in consumption or usage during the year. And then your operating expenses did also decrease, mostly due to your sewer charges, decreasing due to the change in sewer systems that occurred in 2017. So overall here, your unrestricted net position is about $10.5 million, and this is net of the township's investment in the Western Township Utility Authority, as it's a better representation of kind of what the township has. And then a similar slide here showing the similar data, and this is just for the solid waste disposal fund. You can see here in 2018, it was pretty break even between operating revenue and operating expenses, and the final unrestricted net position at 12/31/18 is about $166,000. That's all for the slides in front of you, and Carrie's going to discuss our end of audit letter here.
Where's the letter? What page number is it in here?
The letter should be on Plant Moran letterhead addressed to the board stapled. Do you have a copy? I think there's
Okay, let's hold on here. And
some in the back.
Page 79.
page 79
Yeah.
in the PDF.
That's it.
All right, dated May 23.
Correct.
Yep, right here.
All right. Good. Got it.
Great. So this is our required communication back to you at the end of the audit. We reach out to you at the beginning and let you know how we were planning the audit and give you an opportunity to communicate with us if you have any concerns. I want to point out what's not part of this letter is we do not have a letter identifying any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. We did not come across any issues that rose to that level at all that would need to be reported, which is fantastic. We don't, not all of our audits are that way every year at all. It's definitely in the minimum. So Cindy and her team did a wonderful job preparing for us. We didn't have any audit adjustments either that we identified during the process. The first couple pages of this letter go back through a lot of things saying, reporting back to you, we did what we said we would do, and also letting you know that we did not have any difficulties, that we didn't have disagreements with management. There were no audit entries identified in there. The second piece of the letter is some legislative items, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just wanted to highlight a couple key ones. It does talk about in here the uniform chart of accounts. This has been a very hot topic, especially among finance directors, as it will be a significant change that will require adjustments to the general ledger. At this point, the state has delayed it multiple times. They've most recently come out and said, just stop and don't do anything until further notice. And so that's what we're recommending to our clients. They're really working to try to put forth an effort to try to get better tools and really actually have some other communities go through the process first so that they can learn from that implementation and then have everybody else roll it out. So TBD on when that will be. Revenue sharing, the budget obviously is not passed yet by the governor, but the current budget that she put forth showed a $68 million increase to revenue sharing. And so that's detailed in here, but we're pending passing of that budget to see where that number lands. There's also a lot of information in here about your legacy cost reporting that we just spoke about with PA 202, and I know you've been going through that process and are familiar with it. The one thing I did just want to comment on is that there are changes that the state did make this year, which requires you to have actuarial assumptions that comply with what they are asking for. Those, unfortunately, at this time do not align with what GAAP requires you to report on in your financial statements. There is a work group in process to try to work with the state to either get ranges or make those align, but right now what that means is you would need to have 2 actuarial valuations in order to meet the state requirement and then also to comply with GAAP. So that'll be on your radar as you go forward to get the reports for next year. Right, we're just the messenger. Public Act 57 is also in here. That's a lot of disclosures and things that you need to make public. That does not apply to brownfields, so it would just apply to your DDA district. There's a lot of information in here about the transparency really is what they're requiring.
And we're doing that.
Perfect. And that was all I was going to cover. If anyone had any questions for any of us.
You have a lot of discussion in here about PPT, personal property tax.
Yeah, so
To comment on that, because that's been when is the complete phase out for industrial? Or maybe it's already happened?
Yeah.
For manufacturing.
I don't recall the exact year that it finishes. There was a memo is what it was that came out from the Department of Treasury in June of 2018, and that's what's detailed in this letter. And it changed it refined, I guess, different pieces of the process. It defined better what payments will come when. It created an opportunity for any issues that happen, overpayments, underpayments, to be corrected now in May. So you get your reimbursement in October, you should.
From the state of Michigan.
From the state of Michigan. And then any excess that is distributed that occurs and is left over, that payment is then being distributed in May.
What is your estimate of the percentage that we are being held, held harmless, or the state is reimbursing us for lost personal property tax for a certain amount of time? When is that ending, and what percent have we been recovering?
Do you know? I don't recall the year that it's expiring.
23? I think it expires, I voted for it. I think it expires in 23, but...
Expires, you mean the reimbursement?
Yeah. I mean, the objective was that communities who depend heavily on personal property tax, and we don't, would be phased out until the year 2023, at which point they'd be on their own. There'd be no more reimbursement. Now, I think for some communities like Wayne, Dearborn, Woodhaven, the expectation is that they were going to have to figure out how to make up the difference over the next 8 years. And I don't think they will. So my hunch is that the legislature is going to come back at some point and either extend that date or modify the law in some other way that we can't comprehend right now.
What percent of our tax revenue is personal property tax in Plymouth Township?
I don't know the percent, but the amount that you got reimbursed for in 2018 was $297,000 was your LCSI payment.
And then we just got, in the May payment, we just got an additional $57,000.
Okay.
So call it about $350,000 per year in personal property reimbursement.
But our total personal property, because we are, on commercial, we're collecting personal property.
I would say
still.
it's roughly 15% of our total right now.
All right,
It's nothing to sneeze at.
No, that's a material amount. And we have till 2023 to figure out how to, so that's why we're not on easy street necessarily, because if that goes away, you've got to make the 15% gap, which means either raise property taxes or cut costs, or maybe the state will drop manna from heaven or something.
A couple couple quick comments that I wanted to make. We talked about fund balance earlier, in the general fund being about 15% on the unrestricted fund balance. So on the current position, just outlook of the township, I think, you're right in that ballpark of where you need it to be. I would be looking and focused on the long term, and I know we've talked about it in the past, especially the pension and OPEB. And I know the township has taken the right steps to try and correct that, and you had the approved plans for PA 202 with the state. But just from the perspective of things that would be potentially troubling is just the long-term liabilities, making sure you have a plan to put that money aside to fund those liabilities. Because even though the actuary estimates the liability at X amount of dollars, we know that the liability is not going to be necessarily that dollar amount. However, it's going to be a significant amount. So 19 million, or I forget the exact dollar amount of the OPEB. It's definitely a number that's pretty significant. Now, having said that, the township's always made payments as you are required by law. So, you're not falling behind or anything like that, but it's just a concern overall.
Recall, we've had some payroll anomalies over the years. Recall the question I asked you during the audit about the FUTA and FICA withholding on the opt-out that we have not been taking for decades or for whenever. What did you determine on that, if anything?
So I know the township has had discussions internally, and I know we've had a couple discussions during the draft meeting. I will defer to the township, but we've had those discussions. I don't think there's anything that's been fully concluded upon at this point, but I know that's something that's being talked about.
Has that payment been made to these retirees for 2019?
Not as yet. We're still working with the tax attorneys in order to resolve all the outstanding issues, and that's coming soon.
What other issues are there?
I urge you to hold that until you're sure you got a resolution.
That's correct.
Because
That's
we
what
don't
we're
want to
doing.
go another year with Band-Aid.
We are working with tax attorneys in order to make sure that that it's done properly for the state, for the township, and for the employees.
No, it's a reimbursement.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? I would be remiss if we did not recognize, well, John, you want to come forward?
Hang on, are there other issues related to tax liability?
The only one I'm familiar with would be the healthcare reimbursement, and then the vehicle. There's been a vehicle reimbursement issue.
Oh, not a mileage reimbursement of use of a vehicle.
Use of a vehicle.
Personal use.
It's, if you use a company vehicle, it's imputed income. If you use it for personal, right?
Yes.
Technically speaking, that's imputed income.
So you have to pay FICA and FUTA, I think, on the imputed income.
If you have a company car and you drive 10,000 miles for business and 10,000 miles for personal, the 10,000 for personal is imputed income.
Yes. Yeah, and I think we've had some trouble with that calculation, which is payroll-related thing.
Okay, any comments from the public? Mr. Stewart, did you, on the audit, or no? Okay.
I wasn't going to, but John Stewart, 14956 Maplewood, 36-year resident and 42-year attorney. 3 years ago, in 2016, it was my experience to visit 43 major public school districts around Michigan. Unanimously, the reaction was, what about the politics and the finances going on in Plymouth Township? What's up? I'm very happy to see on page 3, and I only have one question with 2 words. On page 3, there were 0 difficulties encountered in performing this audit. And secondly, there were 0 disagreements with management. Would the 3 of you testify as a practicing attorney that there was full disclosure of all finances from this board and this treasurer? 2 words, full disclosure. The 3 of you would testify to that?
No collusion.
Thank you very much and good night.
Mr. Supervisor?
And you pay your own bar dues too, right, John?
I would just Mr. Supervisor, I'd also like to note that the 2015 audit, which we had to finish when we came here, and also shared revenue from the state was being withheld until that happened, the cost of the audit was $104,785. The next year, 2016, where we had to have the assistance of Plant Moran in clearing up a lot of the bank recs and stuff like that, and then of course with the help of the treasurer and his staff and the hard work of Cindy and the people on my staff, we reduced the audit cost to $89,000 for the 2016 audit. For the 2017 audit, again, with the hard work that was being done and the countless hours that were being put in by our unselfish CPA and accountant, Cindy Kushner, the audit cost was $54,870. And this year's audit, 2018, for the same reasons, for the help that we've had in cleaning up the processes with the treasurer and his staff and my staff and Cindy's hard work. And when I say hard work, I mean this person has put in that period of time almost a total of an additional year's worth of hours in labor, and I think uncompensated. The cost was $41,110. So by all accounts, reducing more than in half the annual cost for audits was the result of the kind of hard work and dedication. And I have to also say that the people on these staffs are all residents. I mean, the people on Mark's staff are residents. Amy is, Cindy Kushner is, Mary Ann, Rachel. These are all residents. These people took this seriously, not only as good employees, but they felt responsible as citizens also of the community and gave selfishly of themselves. And I think that really we haven't done enough for these people over that time. And I just think that we know that Cindy is leaving and taking another job in Northville, and I think that to not recognize the effort that she's put in there we'd be remiss in not doing that. So I want to thank her, and I want to thank Mark and his staff, and then Mary Ann and Rachel for all the hard work that they did. You can't do this the right way without good people feeling responsible in their job and feeling responsible for their community. And they've just done a fantastic job.
Kudos to you and your staff too, Martin. You guys, you've been super in walking us through messes and everything and helping clean up, and great job for all of you guys. Thank you.
No, we thank you, and as I always say, we appreciate working with the township. It's been a pleasure. This is the earliest we presented the audit. The first meeting in June, the audit report's dated in May, so it definitely took a lot of work, just as the clerk mentioned, and it was a collective effort. So it was a lot of people involved. It wasn't just Plant Moran by any means. The township took on a lot of the weight, as you can see in the fees being reduced over time. And as I said a few years ago, we don't mind charging a lot less. We want to do what's right for the township. We want to provide value. So, the township took on a lot of the burden, a lot of the work, a lot of the heavy lifting over the last couple of years, and it really showed. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Have you prepared for 2019 a list of things that we need to do different to make the next audit easier? Things gone right, things gone wrong, I don't know, something to lessons learned, whatever. I realize what's written in here, but I'm talking about procedural internal process, which is especially important with the finance director leaving?
So procedurally, any findings or anything like that, there was nothing of significance that would need to be done during 2019, to be honest. From the perspective of what needs to be done to prepare, we always provide the township during our planning stages of what needs to be prepared for the audit, the schedules, we provide prior year schedules and kind of provide potential recommendations of tweaks and adjustments. So we'll definitely do that. Normally that occurs sometime in January timing. We're happy to meet with the new finance director earlier to do that, whatever is the best in order to make sure that the process is as smooth as possible.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the board or from the public? Do we have to take action on anything tonight, Jerry?
Yes, we have a proposed
Okay, so we have a motion to formally adopt the recommendations in the audit. Do you want to make that motion, Jerry?
Yes. Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve Resolution 2018-06-1158, accepting and approving the audit for fiscal year 2018, along with financial statements, all reports, and letters requirements, required communications, and follow-up recommendations to be filed with the state of Michigan by Plant Moran.
Motion's made by Clerk Vorva. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Heitman. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Dempsey?
Yes.
Trustee Dorshevitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey?
Yes.
Trustee Heitman?
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Treasurer Clinton?
Yes.
Trustee Kermy?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
You guys going to be okay financially, though, with concerned? You drove up in the same, Martin, you're in the same car you were in last year. I'm a little concerned.
Martin's going to have to trade in one of his Beamers.
Oh.
All right, we're going to move on to item G. This is supervisor and trustee comments. We do have a meeting on June 25th. Cindy, don't go away. Come here. Come back. Jerry made all his comments, but I haven't made mine yet. So it's a roast. It's a roast. So we are meeting again on June 25th. It will be our next meeting. We will not have a study session on July 2nd due to the 4th of July week holiday. I do want to take a moment to thank Cindy Kushner for all of her incredible hard work on behalf of the people of Plymouth Township. You're a township resident too, and it's both professional and it's personal for all of us, including you and all of your staff. I know that you're going to throttle back a little bit. You've worked really hard for us the last few years, and I know that you are going to be more of a consultant now, both for the city of Northville and also for us too. So you're not going away completely. We're still going to keep calling you about stuff, but all of this success that we have seen in the financial turnaround and the accounting revival that we have seen in this township over the last 3 years is in large measure due to your hard work, and we truly appreciate it. We wish you all the best in your next phase, and rest assured that we're going to be talking to you still about a lot of things, but on behalf of all of us in Plymouth Township, we want to congratulate you and thank you for all your work.
Don't call us if your Litchfield SAD goes bad.
And we're going to get Litchfield paved one of these days. That's right. That's right. So I think that's all I have for tonight. Bob?
Nothing.
Gary?
All set?
Jerry?
Yes, just to let you know also, the city has confirmed that on the 25th, they're going to be issuing a check for the money for the dispatch to
So
us.
for approximately 50,000?
It's around that amount, right. It's going to be, they're going to be issuing that. And for the board's edification, Cindy's going to be working as a consultant for a period of time until we can bring the new person on, and so that it'd be kind of like a contract type arrangement that we have, so that she can help with the transition. And again, she's doing that because she's a resident and cares, and so we're grateful.
Mark? Jack? Chuck?
Township engineer, sidewalks, the sun shining, repair and gap.
Repair project is going to be, I think, advertising for bid this week. We've been refining the area that we're working on. We just got a couple requests in this week, so that should be getting advertised for bidding this week. And so we should be moving forward with that and getting that process moving. I think the way the schedule
When do
is-
you think you would be actually pouring concrete for repair?
Probably in August. And then for the gap part of it, they're finishing up survey right now so that we can finalize the design plans and get that moving and hopefully be along the same lines, maybe in September, getting concrete poured for that.
And North Territorial will be the longest section. You were able to make that happen?
That's the section we're working on this year, is the North Territorial section.
So you've abandoned everything on Andover Trail for now?
For right now, we have, yes.
Okay. Gosh, we haven't heard anything from the chiefs tonight. It's a rarity. Usually you guys are the center of attention.
When can I come and touch the new fire truck and the new ambulance? Can I sit in the driver's seat?
Oh, yes, you can. This Wednesday, we're going to have an official push-in ceremony for the fire truck. Over the weekend, it has been responding from runs to runs, making sure that everything works. The ambulance was put in service last Thursday, so at any time you'd like to see them. As a matter of fact, had I been thinking of it, I would have had them out here this evening, but I was too busy getting them ready for service.
So what does Wednesday call?
We're going to do a push-in ceremony. What it typically is in the bygone eras of years past, they used to push the horse-drawn carriages into the stables because you can't have horses back them in. And it's been a tradition in the fire service to, when a new truck is going into service, to push it into the bay for the first time. And at noon on Wednesday, tomorrow, we're going to push the truck in.
And the public is invited to that? Or
well, I've
or
invited the
board?
press.
Okay, the press. All right.
It's,
Okay.
it's a
I
very
didn't read my
short
email, so
ceremony.
I don't know. Did you invite the board or not? No. No.
I just found out about it.
I just did.
You just did. All right.
You just did.
Noon tomorrow out here?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
All righty. Next on, we're going to move to public comments. Any public comments? All right, hearing none, I need a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Heitman.
I move we adjourn at 8:32.
Motion's made by trustee Heitman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by clerk Borba. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.